Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Desiree Cassell. I'm an orthopedic and pelvic floor physical therapist specializing in women's health, aka pelvic floor. I'm a wife, mom of 3, foodie, lover of all things movement and nature, and I'm super passionate about educating, empowering, and supporting other women like you to find and maintain balance throughout all aspects of their lives, without pain, pressure, or peeing their pants. And this is the Balanced Momtality Podcast, where we will talk about all things pelvic floor, your core, and optimizing your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery, providing you with the knowledge and tools so that you can feel like the strong, playful, and happy mom that you and your family deserve. Now let's get you out of those pads and back to loving movement. Fill up your water, pop in those AirPods, roll out your mat, and let's connect. Before we start today's episode, just a quick disclaimer that anything mentioned in this podcast is not meant to treat or diagnose any medical conditions. If you have any questions or concerns about your healthcare needs, please seek the care of your medical provider. This is also a safe space where we will be talking about very sensitive but important topics, such as issues with peeing and pooping, relationships, and even sex. So if you have littles around, probably a good idea to pop those AirPods in. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey love, so glad you're here for another week on the Pelvic Floor Core and More show. I am currently on vacation as this is coming out live, so I am trying to batch these beforehand, but when you hear this, I should be playing on the beach with my husband and my kids, trying to get in a last minute summer vacation up in the Bay Area. My brother lives in the Berkeley area, and I'm so excited to go explore San Francisco and Muir Woods and get in just some much needed adventure and family time. I'd like to say some R&R, but let's be real. Family vacays are really just parenting your kids in another place, right? But it is going to be nice. It's also my husband and I 10-year wedding anniversary. I can't believe that. That is so crazy. And so I am so excited to spend a night with him alone. We're ditching the kids with my brother for a night, and we're going to get a fun little Airbnb on a vineyard, which will be so nice to just reconnect and unwind and just get to remember that we like to hang out with each other, right? It is always good to reconnect. And with that being said, getting some time to reconnect to yourself is also very important. And so I hope you caught the last week couple episodes where we dove into a few different topics surrounding our core, right? So we had an episode where we were diving into why your core isn't the problem, right? And how it's really a messenger trying to tell you things and give you signals, and how we can really listen to our bodies so we can act proactively and also just reconnect to our system and view it a little differently and stop seeing it and talking to it like it's broken. So that is definitely an episode you should go check out. But we also had an episode that leads into this one very well, where we talked a lot about how it's not about being lazy, right? Maybe you're not showing up how you want, you're not making it happen, you're not getting those exercises in, you're feeling really inconsistent, you're frustrated with your lack of progress of just not being able to show up. And we dove into why it might not actually be that you are lazy. There's a deeper root cause here, and it's called dysregulation. So check that out, because dysregulation is a huge cause of leaking and a even bigger cause of why we are inconsistent with our health and wellness. It wreaks so much havoc on our system, and it leads into this week's episode so well, because today we're talking about the opposite side of the coin, where maybe you are showing up, you are doing the work, you are checking off all those boxes, you keep showing up to those exercises, but for some reason, you're still feeling off even after doing all the things. And you're just so frustrated that you can't actually reach those goals, even though you're eating the right foods, you're exercising, you're hitting 10,000 steps, right? You're trying to do it all, but nothing's really changing. You've Googled all of the things you can do, the supplements, the exercises. You've tried all these different YouTube pelvic floor exercise videos, and yet you're still leaking. You're still dealing with pelvic pain. Intercourse sucks. Your back hurts by the end of the day. You're feeling drained and you don't know what else to do. This episode is going to help break down the big things that you are missing, because it's not just about the exercises. We need to think about the bigger picture and also, again, what your body is trying to tell you. But we are going to really dive into fascia in this episode because, yes, breath and nervous system training are so crucial and they are the foundation, and we are going to address our breath work and our nervous system and get regulated before we dive into exercise, because yes, that is crucial. If you missed last week's episode, go listen to it, because we really dove into nervous system regulation, and we need our system to feel safe. We need our body to feel safe. We need our nervous system to be talking to our body in a way that is safe. If your nervous system is in that fight or flight, stressed out, sympathetic side of your nervous system, your body is in stress mode. This literally changes how your body responds to movement, how your body responds to food. Does it store it as fat because it's stressed out and you have cortisol pumping through your body? Or is it actually burning it all off and metabolizing what it needs because it's got the happy endorphins running through your body and it's sensing that you're going to feed it again and that it's in a safe space to release that excess energy that you just ate? It is literally down to the science. How you think about your food, how you think about your body, how you feel in your body changes everything. But fascia is this big piece that we are just now starting to research and look at. This is something that in PT school, when we were in anatomy, if you didn't know, in PT school, we as physical therapists go through in a cadaver lab from skin to bone. We dissect the entire human body. And it was such a cool experience getting to see those relationships and connections in the system. And even then, we just cut the fascia out. We literally cut it off, the muscles, threw it away. We paid no attention to it, and it makes me cringe. I wish I could go back and look at that fascial system and tug on different parts of the body and see what happened, because it's all connected. And if you didn't know a little anatomy about the fascia is essentially like that white layer on a chicken breast. It's that coating that surrounds the meat, and that is what's happening in your body. It's this one connected piece of connective tissue that does create different pockets and systems and compartments within the body, but it's still all connected, which means a restriction in one part of the fascial system is going to affect other parts of the body. But also, if we just think about that chicken breast for a second, visualize that as your bicep, right? So if your muscle is surrounded in this connective tissue, what if that connective tissue was so tight, meaning that saran wrap was squeezing that chicken breast, right? That muscle is being compressed in that container. And then you go pump a bunch of blood in it by exercising and lifting weights and trying to just exercise and get the pump, right? But imagine what that does to the muscle. It's not going to be able to actually contract and pump as effectively as it should. It's definitely not going to be able to swell and grow like it should because it's being restricted. And in turn, this can cause an a defect in the ability of the body to pump out the toxins and byproducts that's happening when you're working out, causing a lot of lactic acid to stay stored in the body, a lot of soreness, tightness, cramps, spasms, especially if you've ever gone to work out and pretty quickly into the workout, you start to cramp, right? This might be because the muscle is physically being restricted with that fascial system. But even things like thinking about a C-section, right? So when we get a C-section scar line or an incision, we have that cut all the way through the lower belly, and it's going through all 7 layers of connective tissue, skin, fat, fascia, muscle, tendons. Like there's so many layers going through getting cut. And if we aren't thinking about that and we're just suturing it back up and saying, okay, you're good, and not even saying go do some core rehab or pelvic floor PT to get things turning on again, then we're even more at a disadvantage. But even coming to someone like me, we need to make sure we're not just addressing the core, because think about that fascial line at the belly. Think about wearing a shirt. If you were to tether, or literally think about tying a knot, that's really trendy right now, to tie your shirt in a knot or tie it up in a hair tie, right? We're tying our shirt. So if you tie a knot right around the belly button or right around where that C-section scar might be, think about where that pulls on the shirt. You see wrinkles pulling the back. You see wrinkles around the shoulders being pulled, the wrinkles around the whole shirt, right? That whole shirt just got affected by tying a knot in it. And that is exactly what's happening. When we have a C-section scar line, it's yanking everywhere. So yeah, you might get back pain from that. You might even get shoulder pain from that. Heck, you might even get tailbone or foot pain from that, because it's yanking on the system that is also pulling on other parts of the body. But also thinking about this fact that we cannot engage a muscle if the fascia is adhered and restrictive and tight around that space. We first need to open it up. And this is why release work is so crucial, because it's not just about doing more. That myth is dead. If you just do it enough, it'll work. No, that's not how healing happens. This isn't just performance, right? We're not thinking about our life as this race that we need to get through. We need to get to the finish line. We need to get there fast and quit. That's a mindset of performance, right? Do the exercise, add more weight to it, add another day of workouts. What's the next thing I can do? That's just this mindset of go, 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 do. And this is dead. This is going to cause so much problems in your body, not only because your nervous system is going to become way out of whack and start talking to your body and your mind in different not helpful ways, but it's also going to make sure that that fascia is tight and bound, and it's keeping those muscles from really growing and seeing all the progress that you really should be seeing, right? You've been doing all the things. And if you're not seeing the progress or feeling the growth and changes, it's probably because you're not really moving for healing. And that's the difference. We need to listen to our body so that we can really tune in and observe what it's telling us and what it needs, because there's definitely a space for strengthening. I love strength training, but a lot of times we need to soften the body first with our breath, helping balance that core system and also down train our nervous system, making sure our breath is connected into our body, that we're exhaling on effort, that our breath is working with our core, that our nervous system feels safe. We're using that diaphragm to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system. We're calming things and then addressing the fascia, looking at where we feel tight. It's not always muscle. Many times it's fascia. We want to get that fascia untethered so that your body has room. It has space. It has space to move, to grow, to feel. feel, because when it's too tight and compressed and locked up, you start to lack sensation. You start to lack connection. You can't even really feel what it's trying to tell you. Your body just starts to guard and hold because it's sensing that something isn't quite right. We've got a lot of pressure in this system. So let's just hold tight, because if I release, that's even more uncomfortable because now I'm bulging into this tight fascia, right? So we really need to bring some awareness to the physical tissues of our body that are not just muscle. So our tendons, our ligaments, our fascia, our skin, how do they all connect to each other? How do they move with each other? We need to make sure our body isn't just guarding and overworking, and that we're not just forcing it, right? We're not just showing up to do the thing. We need to actually work with our body and invite that healing, invite the sensation. Think about that pain in an interesting way. Ask the questions. What's happening? Why am I feeling this? And so I'll give you a little example when we're connecting and listening to our body and not just pushing and going, we can start to actually tune in to these signals our body is telling us. Because, for example, say you go to do glute bridges, right? You're going and you're engaging your glutes. You start working out, and after a few reps, your glutes are already kind of cramping up. It's like, ow, like I can't get through this cramp, right? To me, that says things are way too tight. Also, too hard, at least for the situation that your muscles and fascia and tissues are in. And so with that situation, my immediate tip is let's release those glutes so that they can then open up and work through the bridge. So we're looking at fascial releases and soft tissue releases with things like a lacrosse ball against the wall, rolling around in the glute, maybe even foam rolling, although I think foam rolling can be a little intense when the glutes are pretty tight, right? You've got all the body weight and gravity on it. So I really suggest taking a lacrosse ball or massage ball to the wall and rolling against the wall with your glute and just putting as much weight into the system that feels tolerable, that you can still relax into. You can breathe into it and feel expansion there, really sinking into where you feel tension and tenderness, and breathe into it so we can expand and open and melt around it. But starting to get opening into the tissues before you go strength train, so that then there's room and space for them to grow and build, and really opening that space up so you can get that power and control that you're working so hard to get. But also looking at scars. Scars are a direct, obvious sign of fascial restriction in the body. So we need to work on our scars, people. It doesn't matter how late in the game it is. We can always affect how those connective layers connect to the scar line. But ideally within that 6-week healing window, or after that 6-week healing window, right? So between 6 and 12 weeks, we have a really beautiful time to really affect the maturation of that scar tissue. So in the first 6 weeks of a new incision, we are not touching it. We're letting it heal. We might be placing a hand on top of the skin or on top of the incision to just gently bring some awareness to that space, bring some warmth and circulation to that space, breathe into that space. That is a great way to gently mobilize in that early stage, but we don't want to start tugging on any skin, scar lines, fascia, anything like that until we're past that 6-week mark, incisions healed beautifully, and then we can start with some gentle scar mobilization and progressing into pretty intense scar mobility, right? And fascial mobility and cupping, skin rolling. There's lots of different strategies for getting into the fascia and getting into the scar lines using scraping tools, gua sha tools, so many awesome tools out there to get into these tissues, because after 6 weeks, while that scar is maturing and healing, it can become very stiff and rigid and sticky and stuck to a bunch of the structures around it if you don't touch it at all, Or you can make that scar line very soft and mobile and glides against every structure around it, making it part of your system and not an anchor and a restriction in your system. But even if you missed that 12-week mark and no one told you to touch your scars or anything like that, don't worry. Yes, you won't really be able to affect the scar line itself. It might stay stiff and rigid, but we can definitely affect how everything else is connecting to it and make sure things are gliding around it so that we're not just living with this anchor in your system. And yeah, it might be the appendectomy scar from when you were a kid. It might be that you fell on your tailbone and your fascia has been bound there since you were a teenager. It might be the C-section scar from your kid 15 years ago causing your neck and back pain. It might be your neck fascia being tight from sitting at a desk all day for years, and now we're wondering why we can't really stand up straight, right? Our fascia is going to bind based on our movements, our postures, our patterns, and if we stay in certain postures and movement patterns over and over and over, the body, especially the fascia, likes repetition, and it's going to start to stay there and start to tighten. It starts to observe, where do we need to tighten? Where do we need to let go? Just like during pregnancy, it lets go in the belly, right? It allows that growth and expansion. But guess what? Because of that, it also tightens on our sides and on our back, which is why we can have so much back pain during pregnancy. And if we don't address the fascia and just work on core strengthening, we're going to miss it. We're still going to probably have back pain and probably have a hard time engaging our core, especially if you have a diastasis. A lot of this can be because the fascia and even the muscles are guarded and tight on the sides, pulling the center space open. So you can do all the core work you want, but if you're not actually releasing and softening the tissues on our sides and your back and other parts of the body to create space for that ab line to come together, you're never going to see that space fully improve. So we really do need to think about our fascial system in addressing the soft tissues in our body before we go jumping into just strength training all the time. And I'll tell you, this is something that I'm helping women deal with all the time. Restore does have, so my online Restore program, my on-demand 12-week program does have a bonus module where there are over 10 different ways to release soft tissue in your body. I give you the manual therapy techniques I teach people and that I do on myself all the time to address the fascial tension, pelvic alignment, scar tissue issues, right? We're trying to look at the whole system, not just show up for exercise because it is so much deeper and more complex than that. But it is also something that is so beautiful when we really start to connect and recognize these changes and tensions and guarding and holding patterns in our body and start to address the fascia and the tension and release these tissues. It's not just about strengthening and go, go, go. I've had some beautiful breakthroughs inside the Restore program that I just want to share with you, where we've had one woman who had terrible, debilitating hip pain after her third baby. She was trying to do the bridges and the core march and all of these exercises that I have inside the Restore program. She was still struggling with the pain. She finally sent me a message because yes, inside Restore, you guys, you have direct access to me to ask questions and say, hey, I'm feeling this. What should I do now? Or should I even continue with this, right? So you're not on your own. But this woman had been doing that on her own for a while and I hadn't really heard from her. And she decided to finally reach out and be like, this isn't feeling that good. I'm still having a little bit of pain with this. I keep progressing each week because the pain isn't getting worse, but I just want to know, should I continue with it? What else should I be doing? She felt stuck. She was able to progress with the exercise, but just still wasn't feeling good in her body. And this is where we had to have a heart to heart. She was showing up for every 20-minute workout almost every day. She wasn't really showing up for the 5-minute breath work every day. She was doing a little breath work throughout the day, but she wasn't spending time sitting in her body and breathing and expanding those tight spaces. And remember, we use breath for a lot of things, and one of them is massaging and opening our tight muscles and our tightness in our body. I mentioned fascia likes repetition, and it does, which is why the breath is so beautiful for helping mobilize our fascia, because the fascial system loves repetition, especially at least 3 times. If we can get at least 3 movements, the same movement over and over and over, the fascia then goes, oh, okay, let's release here because we need this motion. Versus if you just stretch one time, take a few breaths and move on, it's not going to do it. So we want to go into dynamic movements with fascial mobility. And we will, and we do get a lot more into that in one-on-one coaching and inside Restore. But I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what this really looks like in real life, because just getting this woman to start doing the breath work a little bit more intentionally, and then I told her to go scan the bonus module with the soft tissue release strategies, and I told her to start using the lacrosse ball on her glute externally, working around the hip and in those tissues, and lo and behold, not even 1 day later, she said her pain had diminished significantly and was almost already gone because she was just showing up to strengthen. She wasn't even feeling her muscles, feeling her tissue. I told her, put your hand on your hip, put your hand in your glute, put some pressure in there, feel around where it hurts. Do the tissues feel soft? Because probably not. Usually when there's pain, there's tension and guarding and holding, and that's your body saying, listen to me. If we had put her hands on her body sooner than the pain, we could have caught that before it really gave her pain. But bringing her awareness to that space, digging in with some tools to open those tissues up, then made them more ready and compliant to go through that strength training without any cramping. And then she's actually getting the strength benefit. But she was also like, oh, this was all I needed to do to get rid of the pain. It wasn't doing the next exercise and building this strength, right? Everyone has it in their head that if I just get enough strength in my body, it won't hurt. And that's true to some extent, but we can have muscles that are turning on too much, guys, and that's going to cause tightness and tension and guarding. And if we just keep doing the thing, guess what? You're going to keep getting tension and pain and guarding. So we need to interrupt that cycle and sit in our healing, sit in your body. What is it telling you and where do we need to work? But I want this episode to just give you a little bit of a reminder that it's not just about the strength. It's also not just about the breath, and it's also not just about nervous system regulation. Yes, these are all huge foundational pieces that we go over and Restore a lot, but so is the soft tissue work. So is the manual therapy and the fascial release. We need to get our hands on our body, whether it's our hands, a tool, a Theragun, a gua sha tool. There's so many awesome strategies out there, but even dynamic movement and breath can really help open the fascial system. So just start reconnecting and listening. Where is your tightness? That's where you need to start some release work. That's where you need to start getting the breath. That's where you need to start paying attention and not just showing up to strength train. But otherwise, if you want any more detailed tips and strategies and tools, come join me over in Restore, where we can definitely dive in more to your personal story and your body and your journey and give you more strategies for getting out of pain and loving movement again. But otherwise, stay tuned for another episode this week on the Pelvic Floor Core and More show. And hopefully next week I'll also have something for you. I am jumping right back in after our vacation, so we'll see how early I get the podcast episodes out. But thanks for staying with me through this episode. I would love if you would leave me a 5-star review. If you have not left me a review yet, please do so. This is the lifeblood of a podcast. It really helps show me that people are listening, that they're benefiting from this, and it also helps the algorithm so other people see the show. So With that note, go leave me a review. Enjoy your afternoon, and I will see you here next time on the Pelvic Floor Core and More Show. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you've got so many other important things going on, but I hope it was helpful and you leave here with some tools to help you in your healing journey. And I just want to ask you, if you have found this helpful, to please leave a review on iTunes. Scroll down to the bottom of my podcast page and leave that 5-star review so it can help other women see this information. And also, if you want to be a part of my community of amazing women trying to balance all the things, great tips and insight, and sharing stories and just motivating each other along the way, feel free to join my Facebook group, The Balanced Momtality, Wellness and Support. I hope to see you here next time on the Balanced Momtality Podcast.